Hello there! It's another edition of Tech Trends, the program that takes you on a ride in 25 minutes to seek out innovation and creativity that are unique to Africa. Here's what we have on the program this week. We'll take a look at the Empowering Women in Tech conference hosted by French Tech Lagos with support from the French Tech Missions Community Fund. Plus, I'll be diving deep with Dr. Fine Osakwe, member of the Forbes Technology Council, and we'll be discussing the role of leadership in driving effective cybersecurity strategies and more. We'll give you more in just a moment. Do stay with us. But just a quick reminder that whether you're a tech enthusiast or just curious about how tech impacts you, you are in the right place. This is Tech Trends, and I'm Olayemi Otunuga.
Everybody should want to make sure that we have the cyber tools necessary to investigate cyber crimes and to be prepared to defend against them and to bring people to justice who commit it.
In an era where innovation drives progress, empowering women in the tech industry is not just important, it's quite essential if we want a more inclusive future. That's why the Empowering Women in Tech conference, hosted by French Tech Lagos with support from the French Tech Missions Community Fund, brought together leaders to discuss diversity, leadership, and innovation. The event was an opportunity for the French Tech Mission to highlight their efforts to gender parity in the tech sector, promoting diversity and equality while inspiring the next generation of female leaders. Let's take a look.
Absolutely. I just want to hammer on the point of
The Empowering Women in Tech conference, organized by French Tech Lagos with the support of Mission French Tech, brings together female leaders and innovators for an important dialogue on diversity, leadership, and innovation in tech.
We have Lele, we have Kemi, Olajide.
This marks the first edition of what will become an annual event aimed at driving progress in gender equality, inclusivity, and the empowerment of women in the tech space. The statistics are sobering. The World Economic Forum estimates it will take 131 years to achieve full parity at the current rate. For women working in tech today, waiting more than a century is a timeline that feels far too long. But events like this are one part of the solution. In this room, there's a palpable sense of feminine energy and a shared resolve to change. The Consul General of France in Lagos speaks passionately about key areas of collaboration between France and Nigeria.
The French tech players who are present in Nigeria, surprisingly, they are not very well visible on the Nigerian tech community. And we are here to stand, to do the contrary, to make them more visible on the daily life, on your activities. However, beyond public initiatives and incentives, the private sector has been very active for a long time. And additionally, around 15 fundraising have been completed by French VC funds in Nigeria. This is amazing, but that's not enough.
His speech also touches on the need to set the balance right between men and women in the tech industry.
According to the 2023 report of the World Economic Forum on gender equality, Nigeria is ranked 130th out of 146 countries. This underscores the imperative for the continued fight or combat collective efforts to enhance gender equality and gender inclusivity.
Next, a board member of French Tech Lagos highlights the importance of addressing the current numbers of women in tech and the value that women-led tech businesses bring.
According to Forbes, female-founded startups achieve 10% higher revenue than male-founded startups. Kaufman Foundation also made an assertion and cited that women-led tech businesses create 1.5 times more jobs than male-led businesses. Having women-led tech businesses creates room for greater diversity, unique perspectives, meeting undeserved markets, and they are more socially responsible, creating more room for empathy, as the case may be. With this fact, there is a sad reality today, ladies and gentlemen. Most organizations are actually not led by women.
The conference features two stimulating panel discussions. The first panel looks at how investments can act as a catalyst for gender equality and inclusion in tech, while the second shifts the focus to women's leadership in sustainable innovation, especially in driving social and environmental impact in Africa.
I think, the first thing is, how do we expunge and change that mindset, that subconscious bias? How do we remove that, right? I think that's one of the key issues that we're seeing, that, that starts from birth and, all the way through to when you're an adult. And, you then have to be more conscious of how do you, sort of separate that thought process from what the reality is? Because, not including women in any sector, specifically tech, is leaving money on the table. And I think that's one of the key things that we've seen.
There's a lack of investment readiness in female-led startups, but I think that comes from the systemic issues that we're discussing, right? And I think that's where mentorship comes into play. That's where, when we think about tech, we often think about STEM jobs, right? But there's so much more to the tech ecosystem than just being an engineer or just being somebody who is in the science or tech aspect of it. There's marketing, there's communications, there's storytelling. Startups don't raise money with storytelling. There's so many aspects of the ecosystem that I think should be promoted more, so that women can say, okay, if I don't want to be an engineer, maybe I can be a tech marketer or somebody who works in tech sales.
When men go to negotiate, men are confident, men are sometimes overambitious. It'll be fun to see some women being able to mirror some of those characteristics with men show. Now, one thing that the tech ecosystem could do to bolster the confidence which women could display in such rooms would be to send money their way. If a woman is sure that if I get into this industry, I get into this sector, there is some resources allocated for me, it would really, really bolster the confidence of a lot of women. It will send a signal.
Investors would definitely invest in those type of companies because data speak for themselves. They know that they will make more money where there's a women-led business, and they make those investments to make money. So they will go for the women. And my perspective is more like, we need to start with education. Education for me is like really the key for that, because in France we have what we call like the social elevator. So really like school is what can make you leapfrog the 130 years to maybe like 50 years. But what we see really is that we have probably like some of those key core area that you need to learn that are probably like learned too late, probably at university level. And then you would have already like, oh, this is not for me. You already have like all this confidence, all those things that happens to you through school that makes you feel like this is not for me. While if you start, like for instance, now I see my kids are in private school here in Nigeria, they start preschool, they start coding, they start robotic, they start STEM. But boys, girls, all the same.
It's a conversation that highlights not just the importance of gender parity, but also how women are leading the charge in creating solutions for a more sustainable future. The commitment to gender parity from the French Tech Mission is clear, and the success of this inaugural conference sets the stage for future editions, which will aim to push the boundaries of inclusion and leadership in tech. 3D printing technology and the hospitality industry are converging in a West Texas desert. It's being called the world's first 3D printed hotel by the project's partners. An industrial-sized 3D printer is extruding layer after layer of a concrete mixture to form the walls of the hotel's first two model units in Marfa, Texas. The plan is to expand El Cosmico, a 21-acre hotel and campground, by 40 extra acres to include 43 hotel units and 18 residential homes 3D printed by Icon, which is an Austin, Texas-based 3D printing company.
I mean, most hotels are contained within four walls, and a lot of times you are building the same unit over and over and over again. I've never been able to build with such little constraint and such fluidity, and just the curves and the domes and the parabolas. It's a crazy way to build.
El Cosmico owner and hotelier Liz Lambert said the technology allows for unbridled creativity in construction. According to Lambert, the 3D printed buildings will incorporate domes, arches, vaults, and parabolic or curved walls, architectural features that would normally be too expensive to replicate on a large scale with traditional construction. The single-story, 12-foot walls of the first two units currently under construction, a 3-bedroom residential space and single-room hotel unit, are printed by Icon's Vulcan, a 46.5 feet wide 3D printer standing 15.5 feet and weighing 4.75 tons. A print technician monitors Vulcan as its robotic arm and nozzle glide through the worksite on a gantry and valve wheels on a chassis. The ink of this 3D printer is a special cement-based material called lavacrete, a proprietary mixture that the company closely guards, designed for strength and printability with resistance to weather elements. Icon CEO and founder Jason Ballard said workers are constantly adjusting and blending material ingredients based on weather conditions every 15 minutes or so.
You know, the base mixture is a you know, it's a little bit secret, so I won't give you all the formula, so to speak, but it's we've restricted ourselves to a list of like sort of globally and ubiquitously available materials so that we can do this all over the world and do it affordably all over the world. So no exotic materials, no super expensive materials. And then sort of the magic happens in the admixtures that allow us to continue printing. This printer has now been running for like something like 36 hours straight. And it allows us to print, you know, overnight. Last night it was like 55 degrees, and today I think the high will be 85. And so the material behaves differently in different humidity and different temperature and different levels of irradiance. And so actually we're like adjusting the ingredients in the mixture in the formula ever so slightly about every 15 minutes so that we can continue printing literally sort of rain or shine.
A typical 3-person crew for this project include a print technician keeping track of the printer and its preset path through software on a tablet. While Ballard touted the around-the-clock workflow of a 3D printer versus a traditional construction work crew, Millard Basley, a science and technology lecturer at Charles Darwin University in Australia, said the automation of 3D printed construction could displace skilled laborers like masons.
The conventional construction method, there are a lot of workers on site. And then even if they're not really professional skilled, or they are very, they know what they're doing for a specific job that they're doing. But with 3D printing, it just cuts so many of those jobs. And then you only need a few people that are able to work with the 3D printer. So that could be one of them. Obviously, from the construction point of view, that's not going to be a disadvantage because still you're going to do it. But I think from the social point of view and the effect in the economy in terms of the local jobs, especially in remote areas, that could be one of the challenges that we need to consider when we're going to the 3D printing method.
Basley co-authored a 2023 study examining the impacts of 3D printing housing, particularly in remote areas of Australia's Northern Territory. Lambert said it takes roughly 6 months to print the 61 hospitality and residential units starting in March 2025, although partners said the entire project and expansion of El Cosmico to a 61-acre property with additional trailers and tents will be completed in 2026. In addition to this West Texas hotel venture, Icon is completing a 3D printed neighborhood of homes near Austin, Texas, and working with NASA to develop 3D printing systems to build structures on the moon.
Cybersecurity remains a critical issue as digital threats continue to evolve, posing risks to individuals, businesses, and governments alike. Last week, we looked at some of the pressing concerns during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, like managing online risk while navigating innovation. But this week, we will go even deeper with Dr. Finay Osakwe, a cyber leader and member of the Forbes Technology Council. Now, let's begin with the current cybersecurity threat environment. As someone who's had a front row seat to the attacks we face, what are some of the most concerning ones you think we should be paying attention to right now?
Oof, look, that's a huge question. There's so many, but maybe we just touch on one or two. I mean, I was here earlier this year, I think, when we were talking about trends to look out for in 2024, and I spoke about third party, and I still think that that is one to watch out for. In July, we also what happened with the Microsoft and CrowdStrike episode, right? It was not really a cyber attack, but it just showed how much reliance the world sort of had placed on third party. And really, flights couldn't work, ATMs were not working. This was a global problem. So I think third party issues and the entire supply chain piece will just continue to be a huge problem. With AI, phishing has just become a lot more sophisticated. So you can no longer just be able to depend on the basic things we sort of used to say, get a phishing email, look at the grammar, look at things like that. Now it's a machine versus machine conversation because only machines now can really detect when a phishing email is trying to deceive you. So, I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time. What we find is really that it's kind of the same thing, but the methods are changing. Because, for example, certain organizations are putting in so much money into their security, what we are seeing now is, you know what, rather than disrupt one organization, for example, how can we disrupt things on a massive scale? So in London, for example, some months back, different hospitals typically use a particular third party to go do blood tests. Okay, so depending on how critical your condition is, they take you to this place to go do blood test, a lab. Now that lab was hacked, and 70% of the hospitals in London could no longer attend to patients the following day. Why? Because you could no longer trust the data in the systems. All of a sudden, if both of us had gone to the hospital to say previously to do a check and we said, oh, we were compatible. Now, because the data has been hacked and manipulated, the doctors were not willing to take the risk to say you are still compatible post the hack. So nobody was doing blood transfusion. It was total chaos. So I would say that is a real trend we're seeing. Rather than break into one hospital, how do we cause confusion on a larger scale? So third parties have really become, I think, the new attack vectors, like we like to call them.
Well, Dr. Sakwe, let's switch this conversation up a bit, right? Seeing as it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so let's go to the role of leadership in cybersecurity. From your experience, how crucial is leadership when it comes to establishing strong cybersecurity practices in an organization?
Oh, leadership is everything, like we like to say. But I think it's probably easier to talk about this from a public and private sector perspective, just so I don't cut anyone out. So leadership, really, if there's no what you call the tone from the top, sort of like the chief executive of the state or the chief executive of a company, lending support to cybersecurity initiatives, it will never work. You must understand, for example, that the reason why you have a police checkpoint is not for you to move faster. Sadly, it's going to make your journey slower. That is kind of what security is not to accelerate decision-making in the organization. It is to check that we're doing the right things before we take the decision. So it's not going to be loved, except there is some support from executives. One of the big security bodies is called ISACA. They did the research and they found out across the globe, they checked with 500 CFOs and CEOs, and they found out that the reason, sadly, why most executives and leadership, people in management supported cybersecurity incidents were because an attack had already happened. So we need to be more proactive.
You're absolutely right, because it's not about whether you think you need it, like you definitely need it. So, Dr. Sakwe, for leaders who may not have a deep, technical background, but are responsible for the security of their company's data, are there common mistakes or blind spots that they often have when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yes, I think one of them. There are several. One of the things I do many times is speak to boards about security for their companies. And the first thing you would find is, where in the scale of all the problems we are facing do we put this one? Okay. You also need to think about it like the governor of a state. Where there's insecurity, there are other things. Where do we place cyber? And I think that is the question that is happening at the management and at the board level and at the executive level, where with all the economic problems, financial issues, liquidity issues, security, where do we place cybersecurity? And I think that the danger is that we are not giving it the attention it deserves. And that is why, if you notice, for the last 3 years, consistently, the cost of a cybersecurity breach has been going up by over 30%. And now, what the World Economic Forum says is that the cybercrime industry is the third largest economy in the world after US and China. So we don't pay attention to it, it could become number one. So I think the point here is it has to be paid attention to.
Dr. Sakri, you're absolutely right, because when we look at the statistics, we see that increase, like you said, and of course, that is that 30% every year is quite a lot. But bringing this home, Africa has, its own unique set of challenges and, of course, opportunities when it comes to cybersecurity. What do you think the future holds for cybersecurity across the continent, and how can we best prepare for it?
Oh, so what the future holds for Africa? Allow me, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm just sorry to say so, and I'm not sure I'll be able to touch on the good, the bad, and the ugly. So maybe I touch on the good and maybe a little bit of the bad. The bad, and then we'll go to the good. There's the ugly side to this conversation. The bad is that I don't think we're doing enough. We have, and it's the flip side of the good, because one good is we have a youth population that are willing to learn about tech. Okay, so in the West, they're kind of aging. So Africa really has a massive youth population that should now be the next frontier. But the flip side of it, which is the bad, is that I think just about 20% of the universities in Nigeria teach cybersecurity. And this is not just even with regards to cyber, this is with all the other things that are still emerging in our market, blockchain, all those things. Just about 15 to 18% of Nigerian universities teach these technologies. So you have this population that should be empowered, because there is a cybersecurity gap in terms of skill level across the world. Now you have a continent that has the population at the right age, but then they are not being educated. So it's a tough place to be in. But I think that ultimately, if we are able to leverage, thought leaders and the amount of information there is online, I really think that Africa holds the key to the talent shortage in cybersecurity in the world.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's just about cybersecurity, but when we talk about AI and IoT and other sectors, Africa definitely fintech. We are quite crucial when it comes to that talent pool. But
100%.
on a personal level, right? We are talking about cybersecurity awareness month, and of course, it's all about the awareness, enlightening the people. Now we hear a lot about cyber hygiene, keeping ourselves safe online, right? What do you think is the most underrated aspect of personal cybersecurity that people often overlook?
So I don't know that there's one, there are several, but maybe we touch on one, especially since we are bringing it home to Africa. One of the challenges in our country is infrastructure. Okay, so I would rather go to a park where there is a free Wi-Fi, because I will not pay for it, than use my data in my house, because I probably don't even have data, because they're just economic issues. Okay, so one of the research we did some months back, we found out that the amount of rogue Wi-Fi in Nigeria is just astronomical. And one of the times I was able to demonstrate to some of the board members exactly how easy it is to steal your password when you connect to a Wi-Fi. It happens in about 10 to 15 seconds. It's the easiest thing.
Mention that when you spoke about going to a park to use your Wi-Fi, because they're not exactly secure.
Exactly. So for me, that's one of the concerns. And I think generally it's just probably because of the low level of awareness and training. But you also need to consider the economic situation too. So there's that balance. But I would say that is one, just because people are not really very aware about what the risks are. they're just able to jump into things. The second one I'll say very quickly in 30 seconds is that I don't think that we have gotten to a place where data subjects, who are the people who own data, like me and you, who go and register for a service with a particular institution, and the data processor, which are the institution that now uses our data. I don't think we've gotten to a place where the data subjects know their rights and the institutions understand their responsibility. That's another thing we need to get to.
But how can we then train ourselves to recognize when something's not quite right, especially when it comes to our data?
Yeah, so when it comes to data, I mean, the regulations are there, I would think, but I think one of the things to remember is that as a subject, rather, you have the right to actually, one, request that your data should be deleted. It's your right. Two, request that your data should be forgotten. Three, request that your data should be erased. Okay, but many times, so this is why in the West, you see them being fined for data breaches and things like that. Is because, for example, someone could go report and say, you know what, I subscribed to an email from you to be able to receive HR vacancies. But now from the same company, I am getting notifications of some of the products you sell. You get fined for that because now you've taken my data against my wish to do something else with it, which I did not subscribe to. So it's called explicit and explicit consent. So, I mean, these are things that hopefully we begin to enforce in our country.
Well, I guess, that's where the awareness comes in, to keep enlightening
100%.
people on how best to stay secure online. Thank you so much, Dr. Fene Osakwe, member of the Forbes Technology Council. It was a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much, Olayemi. It was a pleasure being here too.
That's a wrap on the show this week. Thank you for watching. Just as always, Tech Trends is here to keep you updated on insights, trends, and developments happening in the tech space. Also, don't forget, you can catch all of our episodes on the channel's TV YouTube account. Make sure to watch, share, and like your favorite editions. For Tech Trends, I'm Olayemi Ojunuga. See you next time.